It's definitely the most shocking trade I've ever heard of. So,
Mm.
and I think because nobody knew, right? I think other trades may not have seemed as, and there's a lot of recency bias, I think, going on right now. I There are other trades that were huge, but we knew about them in advance because there was a disgruntled player or there was tensions between the player and the front office. Um, but I mean, you've got a pre-prime MVP caliber player traded who just went to the finals. So yeah, I think it probably is. I actually do think it's a true. The only trade that I think could have beaten this is the one that didn't happen. That was the Hakeem Olajuwon for Scottie Pippen trade in '93 or whatever, '92.
Guys, it's weird. I've been thinking about you guys all weekend. I've been thinking about Luka Dončić, of course, and this trade that went down. Shams getting hacked, but no, this is real life. You can pinch yourself. This really happened. We're seeing Luka Dončić now having a press conference, holding up a Lakers jersey and whatnot. This is real. There's no turning back at this point. So if you've been living under a rock, I'll just go ahead and get into these details. We found out on Saturday night that the Lakers received Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris. There were two other teams involved. Well, how do you land Luka Doncic? You probably have to give up a lot of picks. No, that actually didn't happen. Or you have to give up a star player. That did happen, but to a lesser degree. So the Mavs receive Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and that coveted 2029 first round pick from the Lakers. They finally cut that loose. And then the Jazz, Danny Ainge hiding in the shadows, helping to facilitate this trade. They received Jalen Hood-Schifino, 2025 second round pick, and then a 2025 second round pick from the Clippers. So, wow. There's a lot here, and there's a lot to cover. We're going to get into, I think, some aspects of this that other shows aren't even touching on. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I've been looking forward to talking to you guys about this since the news broke. And I think in thinking of all this, what we're going to do first is play a little true or false. We're all going to give our answers. We'll throw to Justin, then we'll throw to Allan, and then I'll agree or disagree one way or the other with you guys. And we'll elaborate if we have some disagreement. I think some of these will be very easy. Some of these could get interesting, but this will get a lot of info out in a short amount of time. First one, Justin, true or false, this is the biggest trade in NBA history.
I would say so. Like I can't really think. I mean, I was trying to when people were saying that, I was like, it seems a little bit hyperbole. But then talking to other experts, other players, I can't think of a bigger trade, and especially around the trade deadline. I defer to Allan though. I would theory be a knowledge. You might beg to differ, but anything coming to mind and just listening to other analysts, I can't really think of a bigger trade than what transpired this weekend.
And what do you think?
It's definitely the most shocking trade I've ever heard of. So, and I think because nobody knew, right? I think other trades may not have seemed as, and there's a lot of recency bias, I think, going on right now. I There are other trades that were huge, but we knew about them in advance because there was a disgruntled player or there was tensions between the player and the front office. Um, but I mean, you've got a pre-prime MVP caliber player traded who just went to the finals. So yeah, I think it probably is. I actually do think it's a true. The only trade that I think could have beaten this is the one that didn't happen. That was the Hakeem Olajuwon for Scottie Pippen trade in '93 or whatever, '92.
Yeah. In thinking about this, I think the way I would frame it, I think at least by face value in the moment, this is the biggest trade in NBA history. You know, a lot of comparisons made to the Kareem trade when he was moved to LA. Obviously, that resulted eventually in five more titles for the Lakers once Magic got there. But it's kind of like a lot of other dominoes fell before that was really bore out. So I would say on face value, yeah, I think this is the biggest trade in NBA history. This one, you only have to say the word if you want. The Lakers won this trade, Justin. True or false?
I'm going to be long-winded. It depends. I think if you're talking about the future of the franchise long-term, I think easily the Lakers won this trade. If we're talking short-term, I think it's kind of a question mark right now. Just in terms of, I think we have to validate the concerns of Luka and LeBron playing together. I think they'll work, but just to automatically assume that they're going to be title contenders, I'm not really buying that. And with the Mavericks, I think it could go either way. I mean, Anthony Davis has been playing pretty consistently in terms of not getting hurt, but in the past, he has been shown to be susceptible to injuries. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, after the All-Star break? We don't know. If he gets hurt, he's out for the rest of the season. All of a sudden, this is a disastrous trade for the Mavericks, and you're questioning his long-term future, in Dallas. So, but in going the other direction, all of a sudden, AD, he wanted to play. I mean, there's been rumors, and all of a sudden, all this stuff comes out. He wanted to play a power forward, so he's going to get his wish. And if him and Kyrie, I've heard different things about they wanted to play with each other, going all the way back when Kyrie was in Boston. So I think the sure thing in terms of the future, the Lakers won this trade. Everything else, I think, is incomplete.
On your thoughts, true or false?
True. They're set up for the future. They've got their post LeBron plan. That's all they wanted. They're not going anywhere this year. And I think they know that.
Yep, I'm with you there. Third question here. This trade is good for the NBA at large. True or false, Justin?
Yes, true. Got the most attention, most social media buzz. No one's talking about the Super Bowl. Everybody's talking about this trade. So easily. True.
Allan, do you agree?
I disagree. I say false. I think I see where you're coming from, Justin, but I think small market teams once again are getting robbed by the West Coast and East Coast teams, and I think it's a shame.
Yeah, I agree with both of you here, and it's kind of how you both outlined there. It's how you frame good for the NBA, which you could take to mean a lot of things. I mean, in the media game, yeah, I agree with you, Justin. That's true. In the losing potentially Dallas as a competitive team with like a superstar there, their decline could happen quickly. Who knows? Maybe they will contend. Maybe it'll balance out a little bit more depending on how things shake out for Luka. But yeah, I agree with point well taken there, Allan, with what you mentioned. All right. This one I wanted to get a little more specific because a lot of the buzz around this, and we'll talk about the teams more in a minute here, but is that, the Mavs want to win now. And this is a move to win now. So I want to look at this season, and my true or false to you, Justin, the Mavs will be better than the Lakers in this current season. And let's define that as from this moment forward, they will have a better record than the Lakers to finish out this season.
Well, let's take a look at the standings right now. The Lakers, they are the 5th seed as recording of this podcast. They're 28-19. The Mavericks are sitting at the 8th seed, traditional bubble spot, not anymore because of the play-in tournament at 26-24. So really for all this hype of Mavericks and Stephen A. Smith saying they're the title favorite, they have a lot of ground to make up. I mean, I love Anthony Davis, but is he going to, I heard that from some people that they're going to be the 1 seed. I think that's pretty ridiculous, just in terms of this trade making that big of a difference. If we're comparing the Mavericks to the Lakers, I would say that probably, I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm not sold on Anthony Davis's health. I'm not. And honestly, even last year, Allan, what you said about kind of the Mavericks and what other people said about the Mavericks, I kind of think last year was kind of a fluke. I do. Things kind of broke their way. And I don't see them as a, stable franchise that's going to be winning a lot. I just think a lot of things just broke in the right direction. And I would put, the Nuggets and the Thunder at least in terms of roadblocks ahead of them. So it's really tough.
So if their records are 0-0 right now,
who has more wins?
who has more wins? If we're starting this as the start of the season, do you think the Mavs will have more than the Lakers? True or false?
Man, I think it's false. I don't buy it. I really don't. They're the 8th seed. I just to them to make that big of a jump, and I realized, and right now Anthony Davis is hurt too. So like he's not all the way healthy. So I mean, I understand that Luka's having injury problems, but I think at the same time, with the Lakers and all the kind of controversy that happened in the beginning of the season with just JJ Redick and him getting acclimated, I think the Lakers are going to have more wins. I do. Just LeBron.
All right. Allan, what do you think?
It's false. I agree. I mean, hold on to your hats because these are about to be the Mavericks of the 80s and 90s.
Oh, no.
So I'm so sorry for all the Mavericks fans out there. I lived in Dallas for a while, and I think, you all deserve so much better. The Lakers, I think, will be fine. I think they'll plug in a hole here pretty soon in the next couple of days. I think the Mavericks, I mean, their starting lineup tonight is just laughably not good. And I mean, number one in the West, they're going to be lucky if they're not number 4 in their division. I have Memphis, Houston, and San Antonio finishing with better records than the Mavericks now. So yeah, false.
Interesting. I'm gonna go true on this one, and let's make a note and see and come back because I'll be interested see how this plays out. It could go horribly wrong. There's no doubt about that. All right. Question number 5. True or false? This trade is good for Luka Dončić. Justin, go for it.
I would say short term, it's bad. I think if you watch him in the press conference with Rob Pelinka, it's clearly he was caught off guard by this. At the same time, I don't know how he kind of couldn't, just based on what's come out. I mean, and these are reputable reporters stating that it's been rocky just in terms of Luka's weight. So I don't think they're making that up in terms of his conditioning out of thin air. Whether or not that's justified or not, there was friction there. And so I think this had to be somewhat on the table. But I think long-term playing with LeBron, I think this trade is good. I mean, LeBron always wanted to play with this dude. So to me, having a mentor like LeBron James, he can't really get better than that. So I think in the long term, especially being the centerpiece of, the most glamorous franchise in all of basketball, I think it's good for Luka. Long term, but short term, I can see this kind of taking a toll on him.
And what do you think? Trade is good for Luka, true or false?
False. Financially, he's taken a huge hit, missing out on the Supermax contract. From a legacy standpoint, he's just another Laker now, in a long line of excellent Lakers. In Dallas, he had a chance to be, potentially eclipse Dirk. And there's something to be said for being the king of your fiefdom. So I think he's going to miss out on that and just be another nomad who ended up with the Lakers.
Wow, that's a great point. I didn't think of from that angle. My answer would be true just simply because I see this guy as something that needs to light a fire under him, like especially when we talk about the reports of conditioning and things like that. And I just picture him thinking about the Mavericks franchise and not believing in him. And that could be the thing to take him to beyond just putting up numbers that are impressive, but actually being a killer in the playoffs and those types of things that we look for. I took it from that angle, but I love your point about being just another Laker there, Allan. That's well said. Moving right along, this trade is good for AD. Justin, true or false?
It's tough because it means that I have to really believe what these reporters are saying. They're from reputable sources. And it's just crazy how this trade happens and all of a sudden we hear all this drama about Anthony Davis being unhappy with the Lakers unhappy with AD, and just him wanting to play a power forward and all this drama. So if we were to go off of that, I would say it's good for AD. He gets what he wants, and I think he gets to play with Kyrie, and really the West is pretty weak. I mean, there's some great teams, but there's no one that's in a power situation. And last year things broke their way and went to the NBA Finals. I mean, you never know. So I think short term, it's probably good. For AD long term, I think it depends on his health, and that goes for any team he's on. So I think basically it breaks even no matter what team he's on. So I would say it's probably good for AD.
And what do you think?
False. This is a guy that pouted his way to play for the Lakers. Wearing, remember that's all folks shirt. So I think it's not good for him. And I think if Dallas does not come out strong with him, then, I mean, we're looking at, he's going to check out like he did with New Orleans. It's going to be like Roy Tarpley 2.0.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think he's been kind of behind LeBron James, whereas, LeBron gets a lot of criticism, but I think he also, during the AD LeBron tenure together in LA, LeBron got a lot of credit that AD really deserved. But when AD was in New Orleans, he got to a point where he got tired of being that 1A star, so to speak, and taking the blame for things, etc. And he's right back in that slot in Dallas, to your point there, Allan. So I think all in all, I would probably side with that there's probably a net negative for AD, but we'll see how he responds. Maybe a few more years of maturity and that time in LA will be good for him. Allan, I'll start with you on this one. This trade is good for LeBron James, true or false?
That's a tough one because I think false, because I think any hope of winning this year is done. Which is why you saw a lot of rumors about LeBron going to Golden State, which is still being discussed apparently, despite the denials. And so I think I would say false. I think they're too similar. The only thing I think it would be good for LeBron, though, is that Luka is a gravity well, right? He will draw defenders. LeBron will probably be going up against the second tier defenders rather than the first tier defenders when he plays. So that could be good for him. Give him a little more longevity for sure.
Justin, what do you think?
I would go it's good for LeBron. I think less from a wins perspective, more from maybe a personal gratification towards the end of his career perspective, just in terms of mentoring somebody else. And I believe LeBron's game is diversified enough that he would want to assist in Luka's growth being long-term. And I think for LeBron, I don't necessarily think championships are his main priority. I think playing with his son, I think, living in LA, kind of creating his other ventures outside of the court. I don't think he's 100% focused in regards to winning the title. I think in terms of his play, I think we've seen that just in terms of his body and his performance. But I just think in terms of kind of his mindset with Luka, I think he's going to get a lot of gratifications. So even though it might be rocky in terms of their playing styles, I think it's ultimately what LeBron wants. So I'll say true.
Interesting. I've got a big false on this one. There's a saying that I think is true in politics and now in sports, where all power is future power. And this kind of shuts the door on future power for LeBron. He's had, along with Clutch Sports, with AD being there, a grip on this Lakers franchise. And now,
Not anymore.
the gears have turned where if things go poorly here, the Lakers can kind of say, well, peace out, LeBron. You're not a part of our next decade's plans here. They have from a franchise perspective, a little more breathing room. I don't expect something like that to go down. I think it would be much more cordial. Like Allan, like those rumors with the Warriors, like, hey, would you like to take this opportunity to play with Steph Curry and help us out, blah, 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 by making this deal. All right. We talked a little bit about the fit together. We can go through it more when we give our trade grades here. But I really want to ask this one. True or false? LeBron and Clutch Sports didn't know about this trade until it happened. Allan, what do you think?
I actually think it's true.
Wow. Okay.
All the reporting I've seen makes me think that it was true, that this was done without Clutch's input, and I think that's on purpose. I don't think Clutch knew, and I don't think Bill Duffy knew up until it happened.
Justin, what do you think?
Well, wasn't there a report saying that Rich Paul knew a little bit earlier on, but LeBron didn't? That's where I find it a little bit suspicious that like LeBron just found out later in the day. Like, how does Rich Paul not talk to LeBron during that point? That's where I find it a little bit unbelievable. So I would say in terms of that timeline, I find that a little suspicious, but I think I'm right there with you, Allan, in terms of the Lakers trying to keep this pretty covert.
Yeah, it's interesting because if the Lakers are trying to sort of create that division and that grip of Clutch Sports like we just talked about, it would make sense they would keep this under wraps until the very last moment. I still have a tough time believing that they didn't know in advance, like let's say at least like a week before this was going down. Reports are that this trade started in early January, that the wheels started turning, that I guess Dallas had made Rob Pelinka aware that Luka could be available, and somehow Rob Pelinka, give the man credit. I mean, he kept this under wraps. They didn't shop him around to get, I mean, you guys, we're all aware of the haul that Rudy Gobert got when he was traded for. We're all aware of the haul that the Knicks gave for Mikal Bridges over this offseason. So it is pretty astounding that it kept under wraps and stayed between these two teams, and then bring in the Jazz to make it a 3-team deal and get it done. So now that we've gone through some of these basic questions, I just want to go through and get your guys' thoughts on this, give a grade. We mentioned that, this is going to evolve over time, especially for the Lakers who are thinking long-term with this deal. I don't think there's a situation where you turn down this trade if you're, regardless of what franchise you are, if you see this on paper, that you're going to get, Allan, as you mentioned, I mean, a top 3 MVP candidate for an aged and injury-prone superstar. Granted, Luka's had his injury issues, but they've been to a lesser degree than AD, and he is 25, and entering that sweet spot where you tend to start winning titles if you're one of the greats and in a fortunate enough situation. So, Justin, I'll throw it to you first for the Lakers. Give me your grade and just kind of your thoughts on this for them. Anything that we didn't cover in the true and false that you want to state?
Yeah, not much. I think it's really smart on the Lakers to do this. I don't understand kind of the angst against the Lakers, especially at this time where you see a lot. I kind of disagree with Allan's point because of small market teams. I mean, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think, not this year, but I think in the most recent years, the Sacramento Kings, you've seen a lot of just small market teams make moves and prove to be very, that the Denver Nuggets, where I live. I mean, they won the title and have the best player in the league. I mean, to me, I think the Lakers, I'm going to sound like a Lakers fan, but maybe they're smarter than everybody else. I mean, to me, they pulled off this move. Kind of sucks to be you. I mean, I to me, it's just like, look at the team I rep, the Bulls. They're super incompetent. I mean, we'll talk about the trade later, but I mean, just because your team is not doing well, don't be jealous of the Lakers until they're pulling this deal off. It was a brilliant move, and now they're going to be secure for another 10 years. So props to them, A+ in terms of pulling this off long term. And bummer for the Clippers. They got that new arena. It seems like they're going to get, new buzz. And now the Lakers, they take that momentum with Luka there. So props to them, A+ for the long term, and he's going to be mentored by arguably top 2 greatest players who ever lived.
What do you think?
I give it an A+. They've set themselves up for the post LeBron future. The tricky part's going to be building around him, something that Pelinka's not really shown he can do yet. So that'll be interesting to see if he can put the right pieces around Luka over the next 5 years or so.
Yeah. And you look at what happened after the Lakers won that title in 2020, it really kind of looked like a lot of incompetence from the front office side. And I would argue that the Lakers are not one of the higher end franchises run in terms of competence. I mean, you can even look back in the Kobe years after Shaq left and how that franchise was managed for a little while there until they get lucky and get, pennies on the dollar for Pau Gasol to come to their franchise. They get essentially gifted Pau Gasol, and this feels to me like another gift. Now, like we mentioned, I mean, kudos to Rob Pelinka, given those struggles they had after 2020. I mean, this certainly saves him for a little while longer, buys him some more goodwill, at least as much as you can get in the NBA front office world. I got to go A+ as well for the point you guys mentioned. I won't belabor the point, but that, this sets them up for, I would say, at least a very interesting and competitive, let's say at least 6 to 7 years, assuming health. And let's go and talk about the Mavericks side of this now. Justin, I'll circle right back to you. Is there any silver lining here? I mean, is it just like an F- that you lose Luka Dončić for Anthony Davis? Anthony Davis has his own credentials in his own right. But where are you going with your reaction to the Mavericks here?
Yeah. Before I give my grade, I want to go through some tweets that might be relevant to this conversation. So I'm going to share my screen now, if you guys can see that up top. So the first one is the Mavericks. Apparently they're not done. And I'm curious, you guys are more the contract mavens than I am. So curious to see if the Mavericks are being able to do this in terms of looking to add Kevin Durant, according to The Athletic. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Another thing is just like the Mavericks have offered refunds for the remaining home games this season to fans who have canceled their season ticket plans. Those are valued around $2,000. That's from Front Office Sports. Scrolling down here, again, offering refunds for Mavericks fans. Mark Cuban. That's one of the first people that popped in my mind when this went down. Is just, what does Mark Cuban think about this? He confirms that he was not informed about the Doncic deal. It says that he's a minority owner, and so he has received a call just before the deal was announced. So I find that very interesting. I mean, the Mavericks are his baby, so I'm very curious to get Allan's thoughts, and maybe I propose this question to him once I'm just done giving my letter grade. Does this open the door for maybe Mark Cuban to make some kind of power play to get his team back? I mean, you trade away your franchise player, and let's say things go in the doomsday scenario, like you mentioned earlier, Allan. Anthony Davis gets hurt. He complains. They're a disaster, and the Mavericks are irrelevant. Do you see anything happening with that? So I'm very curious there. Just kind of Doncic there in disbelief about the trade happening. Nikola Jokic saying that he didn't expect it. And it's some shock from just the around the horn crew as well. I think in terms of my letter grade of this trade for the Mavericks, I'm being a little bit more optimistic. And I understand that they had beef with him. That's very clear. I think they disrespected him by not giving him a heads up about this. And it seems like reports were saying that they were really angry about him just based on his weight and conditioning. And I totally understand that. However, this guy is the most premier franchise player, your franchise has ever had, other than Dirk. And I would say he's better than Dirk. And for a multi-time All-Star, for a guy who's gotten to the Western Conference Finals, he got to the NBA Finals last year, despite a poor Game 2 performance. Just to trade him like that, very callously, and not get equal value. I mean, that's the thing that's baffling to me. Is how can you, from experts that are way smarter than me, how can you not shop this guy? And that's what's baffling to me. I mean, I don't understand why he had to do this in secret. That makes no sense. It seems a little bit cowardly, to be honest.
Let's
You
be
wanna get
real
rid of-
though. There's no equal value in a trade with Luka
but you
Dončić,
take-
right? But you could get more.
Understood, but the trade that transpired, I mean, it's pretty pathetic that would happen. Even the Lakers, I mean, Dalton Connect was included in this deal as well as other picks, and then that was not included. So to me, to at least not shop this guy, to get future draft picks and to get what they got, I would say this is a massively disappointing trade. And I just think for the Mavericks, they're fairly lucky that the West is kind of not as strong as in years past. So I would say optimistically a C for now. And then this is Nico Harrison's job. I mean, and I don't know, honestly, I don't know if he gets another job. I mean, this is an infamous trade. I mean, this will stick at the Mavericks, this stink forever, and things go downhill. Would you want to hire Nico Harrison, the GM of the Mavericks? I mean, he's going to be labeled for this as he's the face of this trade. I mean, he's the face of trading Luka Dončić to the Lakers, and so if they go downhill, to me, he's gonna. I don't know how he recovers. So, being optimistic, 38th seed. I say things can break their way just because of a weak Western Conference. A C, best case scenario. Even if they win the title, long term, I would say probably like a D minus F, just because of just the value. I don't trust Anthony Davis's his status with injuries.
A lot to unpack. What do you think about grading the Mavs? I mean, are you friendly enough to give them a C, or are we going lower here?
I'm in a good mood today, I guess.
There's a lot to unpack. I'll say first of all, before I give the grade, and I'm not worried about Nico Harrison's job. He's going to be a great assistant GM to Rob Pelinka in a few years. Mark Cuban is not going to buy the team back. He's got his eyes set on a bigger prize. Just
Which
don't be
is?
surprised when he opens up the Presidential Exploratory Committee over the next couple of years. I think there's a reason he sold when he did. And took the money from Miriam Adelson, which would be kind of ironic since she's a big supporter of the current president. I give the trade for the Mavericks an F. You lucked out and got Luka, who should have been the number one pick. I think concerns about his conditioning. I feel like I want Charles Barkley to go and give that Jack Black from the School of Rock speech to Luka Dončić and say, like, you know who else has struggles with their weight? Me. It didn't stop Charles from being a dominant player in his prime. And in fact, that weight, I mean, it's the same criticism that people lob at Nikola Jokic, right? He's doughy and out of shape, but it's part of what makes him his game powerful, that weight. And James Harden got the same over and over again. James Harden got criticized for his weight. So I just don't buy that as the reason. And we'll probably get into that later, Matt, but it's an F for me.
Yeah, I think those are fair grades, both C and F. There's so many ways you can look at this, and I think I would give my grade because you got Anthony Davis in return. That's nice, but because of his age and where he is, that's not as nice. So I'm gonna split between you guys and give him a D. I do think they could have gotten a lot more for this, and I do think that there's a case to be made that it's a better path for them. Aging Klay Thompson, he's not coming back to Warriors form. Aging Kyrie Irving, he still does incredible things from time to time, and he's been good on the Mavericks overall, but I mean, is he going to be the guy hitting the last shot in Cleveland again? He's probably not getting back to that level, and that's your backcourt. I just don't think, even if AD is playing at the top of his game, that those guys in the backcourt are enough to get through the Western Conference. I mean, are those guys going to all of a sudden step up and be able to take out SGA and the Thunder, for example? I think, Allan, you bring up the Grizzlies from earlier. I think they could potentially cause fits to this team. I think if you go rosy as possible and this team is healthy and ready to play, yeah, they could get past the first round. I have trouble envisioning them getting even further past that. I do side with their immediate future, having a better season than the Lakers. I tend to see that playing out, but mostly because I'm not confident the Lakers are going to have anything to offer on the defensive end of the floor. And I just don't think you can go into the playoffs like that. I will say I'm a little bit more biased and critical if the rumors are true that Luka is 270 pounds. I mean, I'll fully admit, and Justin, you were recording with me. I mean, when news was out and it seemed like credible reports that Zion was over 300 pounds, and that was pretty much the moment that I thought, I don't think this can be repaired at this point, or like there's an issue going on here that's like a deeper issue when you get to a certain level there. And Luka is not far from that. Now, I don't think they're the same player. Obviously, Luka is incredibly skilled to a fault, maybe, that it can make up for poor conditioning that he's had in the past. But I'm going to go with a D on this. I don't see the concerns with conditioning as enough of a concern that you make a move like this that the Mavericks did and essentially sell off your future for at least, maybe the next 3 years. Optimistically, you're good with AD in the driver's seat there, but beyond that, everything is up in question. I want to bring one more point around to you guys about this before we talk about the bigger picture, and then we need to get to that Fox LaVine deal. There's also rumors, and we know Kristaps Porzingis, I've pretty much despised playing with Luka Dončić. What do you make of these rumors that, it's not only the conditioning, but it's also that Luka is a diva. Luka is really difficult to put up with as a front office. And maybe it was like, hey, this guy is so rough to deal with that we've just got to get him off the roster. Again, not saying that I agree with that, but what do you make of that point, Justin?
I think there's going to be a lot more evidence to that. And I just think based on their success, we've seen, I think, plenty of players through NBA history that were somewhat malcontents, that they weren't as successful as Luka. So until there's more evidence to see that, I'm not truly buying that. We're going to know because he's playing with the most recognizable player on the planet, LeBron James. So we will find out if he, in fact, is a quote unquote diva or not. So to me, I think it was more just what went down with just his weight and everything. I do think that was a factor for the Mavericks. I think it's unjustified. I mean, the dude's producing, let him cook. I mean, I think he repped the Mavericks pretty solid. That's based on his track record, both individual and team accomplishments. But I see the Mavericks were unhappy about that for the reasons that have come out regarding his conditioning. The diva stuff, I mean, look at Kyrie Irving. I mean, this is a guy that had all sorts of problems. Have you heard anything with Kyrie and Luka? Where's that? If Kyrie is such a terrible person, how can he play with Luka if Luka is such this horrible man? I mean, they seem to play together fine. So to me, I don't really buy that with a player that from the sports media that was representing Kyrie to be just this evil person that was going to play for the Mavericks. He's been great there with Luka. So to me, I don't necessarily buy that. I think he'll be fine with LeBron, but we'll see.
Yeah, it seems like if you read Luka's statement to the Mavericks fans that he released, I mean, he certainly seemed to enjoy being a part of that Dallas community. So at least on that side, like a PR side, he's handled that well. Allan, what are your thoughts on, if he is a diva, if he is a lot to handle? I mean, is there a line that can be crossed that justifies this?
I mean, first of all, I think any superstar in the NBA has got a bunch of diva in them. I mean, you can go through LeBron James's passive aggressive actions over the course of 20 plus years. You've always got players who get that reputation for some reason. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns is a perfect example of that, right? He was, you know, blamed for some of the stuff in Minnesota, and of course they can't survive without him. Um, uh, I, some players just don't get along, or they get along until they don't. And Kristaps and Luka didn't get along, and that'll happen. And sometimes it's, Luka being a young guy, it can be a thing where he has a chance to grow a little bit and at least learn to, you know, keep those diva impulses under control. But I think every NBA superstar's got diva in them. I think probably every NBA player has got a diva in them to a certain point. You have to succeed, to make the league. You've got to be that kind of person.
True. Well, and I think it's human nature too. I don't even necessarily blame the players themselves, especially when you look at the AAU system. There's a much bigger topic and digression, but when you're told you're great since you're like 10, 11, 12 years old, that's a different way to go through life. So, all right, I want to zoom out even further and talk about maybe some of the bigger pieces that are underway here. And maybe this is hearsay, maybe this is just digging for things, but we're going to call this the NBA conspiracy zone. And Allan, I want to throw to you first, because there are reports, there are rumblings that this is all a sabotage. Shout out to Beastie Boys in Dallas. And the Mavericks franchise and front office actually wants out of Dallas. Allan, can you sum up for us why that might be the case?
Yeah, so Mark Cuban, as everyone knows, sold his team to Miriam Adelson. Her son-in-law, Patrick Dumont, is the governor of the team. They own the Vegas Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. And from all reports, if you talk to people in Vegas, they hate the Adelsons and Dumont. They don't trust them. They're not, they're not part of the in crowd of casino owners. They're not dining with the Maloofs every night. So is it possible? The whole idea here is that well, first of all, they're trying to get gambling, a large casino gambling, legalized in Texas and Dallas, and it's stuck. It's not going anywhere. So there's this rumor that if the Mavs are bad enough, they can leverage moving them to Vegas in order to get that legislation passed. Is that true? I mean, I guess if you were going to do that kind of thing, that's how you want to do it. But these people also aren't good at keeping secrets, unless you're Nico Harrison, apparently. I think they might take advantage of that, but I don't think that's the plan. But I could see them taking advantage and using that as leverage. But I don't know that the NBA would have a move out of Dallas to Vegas, particularly when we all know that in the next 2 to 3 years, both Vegas and Seattle are getting expansion teams.
Yeah, it seems like if you'd want to move out of any market in Texas, you would move San Antonio. But of course, that's maybe problematic because they have Wemby now. I guess it didn't stop the Supersonics from becoming the Thunder. But I would think of the three markets in Texas, that would be the one that would be in danger of moving, and that doesn't seem likely. Justin, do you feel like, I mean, it's far-fetched to think the Mavericks would move, or do you see it as a realistic possibility?
Especially the groundwork's been laid already with the WNBA, with the Aces, with Mark Davis. And there's other owners that I feel would have a huge vested interest in having a team in Vegas. So why move another team that already exists? I mean, right now, all the rights deals, everything's reliant on keeping your teams as is and adding to that. So to move another team around and then you lose one doesn't really make any sense to me, just in terms of what the NBA terms are. And like Allan said, I don't think they approve it. So, and also too, you're a trade your franchise player and you're going to go to a new city and your team sucks. I mean, I don't understand the game plan there. So I don't really buy that. But people are incompetent. Who knows? So. I mean,
Yeah.
people are stupid. But I from a strategic standpoint, I don't buy that happening.
Yeah, for all the reasons you guys mentioned, I see it as pretty highly unlikely. And I would also submit that if it is true that this is the whole strategy of this trade, I'd like to downgrade my Mavericks grade to an F minus. And I think if Adam Silver got word that this really was the plan and there was any credibility to that, I mean, you're in the argument that they are removed from ownership, like forced to sell for intentionally tanking a franchise like that. All right, bigger conspiracy even. I haven't heard anyone really talking about this, but Allan, if you don't mind, I'll throw it back to you. That you know, putting LeBron and Luka and Clutch Sports together in LA, this could be dangerous for the NBA. Why could that possibly be, Allan?
So there is a current financing effort going on right now for a new European Super League. Um, it is being headed by Maverick Carter, who is LeBron's financial manager, and Maverick doesn't go to the bathroom without checking with LeBron first. So, uh, so basically, LeBron is investing in creating a new league. Um, Luka, of course, is from Slovenia. Um, if there is a new league that is even more player friendly, that has Clutch Sports as its main uh, person, and they pay equally or more, you could really upend. You could cause some issues. There's some interesting things that could happen with that too. You could have a true world championship too, also, right? You could have NBA finals, Euro finals, and then they meet in a world finals. I mean, there's some cool stuff you can do there, but I think there's a lot of damage that could be done too. So this one I'm a little warmer on, only because, I mean, if Maverick Carter wasn't involved, I would say whatever. But the fact that Maverick Carter is doing this, nobody's really talking about this, but this is like a big deal. And it seems like LeBron doesn't want to just own a team. He wants to own a league.
That would be massive. Justin, any thoughts on that?
I'll add a little bit more to your conspiracy, and maybe this is far-fetched, but what if Saudi Arabia gets involved with this league? They're involved with every other sport. Why not this new league? And they have tons of money. They've transformed boxing. They've gone into MMA. They've got their tentacles in WWE. Why not do this new league? And they have tons of money. And they already have a super league with soccer. I mean, this would play into it. The only thing, if Saudi Arabia is not involved, is just the logistics, just in terms of where this league is going to air. Now, TNT lost the NBA rights. Do they get the rights to this league? But, you're talking about ESPN has NBA rights. NBC has NBA rights. Amazon has NBA rights. I mean, does CBS want to get in bed with this new league? I don't know. I mean, that's where I question. And also, any new league, I always say this, it is the most difficult investment you can possibly do, basically a business, is because you have to make people care. So you talk about, like, if let's say LeBron joins this league, and honestly, are you going to be able to get Luka? Are you going to be able to get prominent players from the NBA who are comfortable in the United States to go play overseas? And not only that, lose out on Supermax deals. And I think without Saudi Arabia, which I think, then now we're talking, because they have all kinds of money and they can rival what the NBA can produce. But without Saudi Arabia, I just don't think, in terms of the contracts, I think the league I think it's doomed for failure without a Saudi Arabia connection, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are sources of money when you talk about country or royalty. There are sources of money that are bigger than media companies, even, which can throw a wrench into this whole thing. Guys, I'll throw to you one more time on this topic, and then we really need to get going on the other big deal that happened. That was actually a pretty big deal. Last thoughts on the Luka trade. Allan, start with you. Any last words on this before we move on?
It'll be interesting to watch. I'm curious, and that Lakers Dallas game that's coming up at the end of the month is going to be a fun one. It's a must see, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, people talking about the potential for AD getting booed when they announce him. I don't want to see that personally. It's not not his fault this trade happened.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Say what you want about AD, but I don't think he deserves the heat for this trade happening. Justin, any last thoughts on this trade?
I want to give props to kind of the NBA media. I think just in terms of not believing anything that you see, being skeptical in this day and age. Like, there's a reason why people thought Shams was hacked. I mean, we're in a day and age of a lot of misinformation, and I think it's right to be skeptical, and it's right to kind of hold your horses and not just assume this trade was going down and, getting the final confirmation that Shams said that his phone was not hacked, this was going down, this was true. So I give props to really all of the NBA media. I know people are making a joke of it, of just like, Shams got hacked, this trade can't be true, but being skeptical and not just believing everything that you're seeing and just going with confirmed sources on certain things, because certainly, we're in the wild, wild west with misinformation right now. So props to the NBA community in terms of kind of reining this trade in.
Do you guys, last question, and then I promise to move in. This just popped in my head. Do you guys think this pairing of Luka, like the Lakers, the perception is they're kind of gifted Luka. I think there's some fairness to that. Does this make them the villains of the league now? Like, I know it's a different situation, but are they like anywhere? Maybe Miami Heat's not a good comparison, but the Cavs maybe trading for Kevin Love, building a super team. Are they any form of villain now that they've gotten Luka Dončić? You can give simple yes or no here. Allan, go for it.
No, they have to win first, then they could become the villains. Basketball is just different that way. In baseball, like the Yankees and the Dodgers are the villains because they spend $5 billion and nobody else can. But in this case, there's a salary cap that keeps everybody pretty even. So it's only if they win.
Justin, what do you think?
I concur with Allan. And I think villains are good for the NBA. It makes you want to root for somebody. I mean, people, in theory, I think they love parity and everything being equal, but then no one watches unless you're the NFL. So I think even then with the NFL, we've seen two dynasties, the Patriots and now the Chiefs. And you see how high their ratings are. So you take a look within the NBA, if the Lakers somehow win 3 titles, their ratings are probably going to go up. And it's good for the league. Even though, the fans might not be enamored, but their hatred equals more engagement and equals more money for the players and the league as a whole. So it's a net positive for everybody. The net positive for us because the content gets more views because people are angry about the Lakers. So it helps everybody involved. So I say not yet until they win something.
I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, they were gifted this. They didn't deserve it. So, yes, Lakers, in my book, you are villains. I'm rooting against you now. I'm driving up the outrage. I don't know. It's hard to get mad about it, but we'll go ahead and say, sure, they're villains. I'll just throw that in there to spice it up a little bit, I guess.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video. Also, by doing that, you get all of our back interviews featuring commentators from the WNBA and the NBA, our interviews with PA announcers, and our interviews with journalists from SB Nation, NBC Sports, and The Athletic, and a lot more. Again, please subscribe. Thanks, and now back to In the Lab.
We had another big trade that happened that you probably saw come through while you were scrolling through trying to find out what the heck is going on with this Luka Dončić trade. Break it down real quick, and then we'll give some quick analysis and get out of here. The Spurs acquire from the Sacramento Kings De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. The Kings receive Zach LaVine, a 2025 first-round pick from the Hornets, a 2027 first-round pick from the Spurs, and a 2031 first-round pick via the Timberwolves, a 2025 second-round pick from the Bulls, 2028 second-round pick via the Nuggets, and 2028 second-round pick via the Bulls. So 3 firsts, 3 seconds, and Zach LaVine for the Kings to keep that shorter. And the Bulls receive Zach Collins, Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, and a 2025 first-round pick via the Spurs. So we speculated a little bit. Are the Spurs going to do something, not do something? We had guests tell us, the Spurs tend to wait, which is true. They tend to be a little more methodical, less pulling the trigger, so to speak, on quick trades at the deadline. But they do get a pretty impactful player here. And I guess I have to, because the Bulls are involved here, Justin. They get the least out of this trade, I would say. The Zach LaVine era is over, but you get Zach Collins can be nice at times. Kevin Huerter also can be nice at times, less effective this season from what I've seen. Trey Jones, and then a first-round pick. Justin, just thoughts on the Zach LaVine era being over in Chicago. The Bulls finally did something. Are you happy that they did something? And what are your thoughts on all this?
I think it's acknowledgement that the tanking has begun, and this is going to be a process that's going to last for several years. I think this trade sucks. I mean, they get their pick back that they probably should have had in the first place. But I think it's sad just to see the Zach LaVine era end this way. I just think it's very tumultuous. I don't think he was quite the good fit for the Bulls, and we'll see what he can do, elsewhere. In Sacramento, I think he's one of those players that can score a lot, but has minimal impact when it comes to being a game changer for your franchise, unfortunately. And I just think with Chicago, we'll see what happens. I hope this marks, with their moves, that they move Lonzo, they move Vucevic, they just kind of get rid of everybody to start from scratch over again. I think it's over. And I think that's the best thing for this franchise. Start over, rebuild through the draft, and then we'll see you in 5 years. And we'll kind of see what happens. But for now, it's whatever. They get these players that are they're okay. But we know what's happening here. I think the rebuild process has begun.
Yeah, maybe eventually flipping these players or some combination of players for more assets. Allan, any quick thoughts on the Bulls side of this before we go to the, I guess, more winning teams side of this?
No, I mean, I think you can expect Billy Donovan to be gone after the season, which I think is a good thing. I think you'll see people flipped for more assets as well. I don't know if anybody's going to pay for Vooch, so we'll see what happens there. But Lonzo, I think, is if not a trade target, he'll be a buyout target for sure.
Gotcha. Now, with considering all this, the Spurs kind of break from character to make this trade. And I want to know, Allan, do you think the Spurs did too much too soon here? I think we all probably agree that the Spurs won this trade because they landed the best player in this deal, but was it too much too soon?
Yeah, I'm a little confused about the Spurs thinking here. And I mean, I like De'Aaron Fox. He's got great clutch numbers. But he's also been the centerpiece of a team that's only made the playoffs like once in his entire tenure. So, what are you getting there? Chris Paul, I think, is a more impactful, even at his age, a more impactful person for the Spurs. I don't know. Maybe with proper coaching, De'Aaron kind of takes that next leap, but they're going to be on the hook for a pretty big max contract for him. As a Rockets fan, I'm kind of happy about it because I think it pigeonholes San Antonio, and they lose some flexibility that they did have with all their picks.
That's a good point. Sometimes patience is a virtue, as the old adage goes. Justin, what are your feelings on the Spurs pulling the trigger here? I mean, this certainly an upgrade over Chris Paul in terms of running an offense, but you still have Chris Paul. How do you feel about what the Spurs have done here?
Yeah, it seems kind of desperate when they could have just waited and maybe try their luck at free agency. And then I'm biased, but look at DeMar. DeMar DeRozan and San Antonio, he wasn't that great while he was there. For all the hype about Popovich's coaching, I thought he was a lot better in Chicago. So with De'Aaron Fox, there's no guarantee that under Popovich's tutelage that he's going to improve anyways. So yeah, I remain optimistic. I like De'Aaron Fox's game. We'll see. But I can see it kind of going the other direction. It's peculiar. I agree with Allan. I'm wondering why they just didn't wait, and just kind of see what free agents pop up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to be rosy about this, you could argue this is a move early on to show Wemby that they're serious about winning him and getting him in some impactful basketball. I guess we'll see if there's like a Sacramento effect that has held De'Aaron Fox back. I'm curious to see that, but I do agree this feels a little bit fast, and maybe it's just sort of a value play that the Spurs are thinking that you have De'Aaron Fox disgruntled in Sacramento. You'll get him for better value than any other time you might get him in the open market. So maybe that's the play here. I do agree it feels kind of fast, but I am excited to see this pairing and the Spurs climb a little bit in the standings and maybe hang out in the playoffs. Maybe we get Wemby in the playoffs for a little bit longer than one round if things went really, really well. But that's aiming pretty high for this season alone. We'll circle back and get some more thoughts on this. I wanted to say right now that, Justin, one of the things I learned through this trade is that the Sacramento Kings are even bigger Bulls fans than you are, and especially the past 5 years of the Bulls. They said, wait a minute, we can get Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan together and put them in Kings jerseys instead of Bulls jerseys. Yes,
That's true.
Sign me up for that. Yes, they're older than before. Yes, they're probably not as good players as they were before. But man, it's going to look like the Bulls from like 3 seasons ago. It's going to be awesome. More generally, Justin, what can you say for the Kings here? What do you see for them? I mean, clearly you're looking for an out. You've got De'Aaron Fox, who's disgruntled, as I mentioned earlier, but what can you say for the Kings here? What are your thoughts on their end of this?
Yeah, what a disaster, huh? Just in terms of what they're going through. And then a former guest, Decent Mo, who have covered that franchise for years, and I feel bad for them. Just when they have all this momentum and now they go like 3 steps backwards. That's got to be super frustrating when you're like this close to being finally, edging towards that Western Conference tier. And now you got, as much as I like DeMar DeRozan, he's past his prime. And then, Zach LaVine, I have to say about him. So it's unfortunate, even though they have Sabonis still. I think this is a franchise going in reverse.
So Sacramento, get ready, because Justin is taking his Bulls takes from the past 2 years of the show, and he's aiming them at you now. You get to enjoy those takes. Allan, any other thoughts from the Sacramento side of this?
I mean, I guess they did it because De'Aaron was disgruntled. Who knows if that's the case? The trade doesn't really make sense for them. I mean, they're off of Herter's contract, I guess, but now they have LaVine. I don't know. I just don't think it was a good move for them. And I think if they were truly going to rebuild, unless they're going to flip Zach over the summer for something else, for picks and stuff, and maybe they showcase him here, but nobody seemed to want Zach anyway. So it was a weird trade and kind of in line with historically what Sacramento's done.
Yeah, I think the rumor that I saw was that De'Aaron Fox had told the franchise, I will not be re-signing with you under any circumstances. So just kind of deal with that. Like, get something for me if you want, but I'm not re-signing with you. I've been here a while now. And this team was kind of built where Sabonis and Fox were on that same pathway. They got a little bit older in bringing DeMar DeRozan in, and that really hasn't helped their offense. It's actually kind of slowed down and closed up their offense. They were able to navigate through that when Coach Christie took over, but now it looks like they are, turning towards that rebuild mode that we see teams often do. So best of luck to you, Sacramento. At least you didn't trade Luka Dončić away, I guess is what I can say, towards the end of this episode here. Guys, final thoughts on either of these trades before we wrap up and call it a night here. Any conclusions for the biggest deal in NBA history or this De'Aaron Fox, Zach LaVine deal? Kings doing their Bulls impression. Allan, I'll start with you. Any final thoughts?
Not about those trades. I think I've dug into. Well, actually, just one really quick. A third conspiracy theory, because I know you guys love these. What if Shams was hacked, but they didn't want to let anybody know, so ESPN bribed the Mavericks to make this trade a reality? Oh, see?
Oh, man. Let's get it to Netflix.
Money.
Let's get it to Netflix.
Right.
My final thought really just about anything is I just wanted to give a shout out to a huge trade in the W, right? Jewel Lloyd going to the Las Vegas Aces. That is a great, it's going to be, I mean, Lloyd and Wilson, I mean, hold on to your horses.
Good point. And Brittany, I mean, honestly, before this trade happened, I mean, it was been popping in the W in terms of all the players, the player movement. So it wasn't for this trade. I mean, easily the WNBA had way more exciting trades and people signing in free agency. That includes Brittany Griner going to the Atlanta Dream as well, and there's been countless others too. I think another observation is what's going to happen in terms of the NBA of other trades. Is there other things that are going to drop? Now it's all sorts of rumors. So I find that interesting, but it's pretty quiet. And now all of a sudden this trade happens and everybody's rumored to go everywhere. The Warriors want every all-star in the league. People are going after Kevin Durant. I just find that fascinating how this trade happens and now all of a sudden every star player is up and then Jimmy Butler can't get out of Miami. I just think that's hilarious. So let's see that.
All right, I want to do one more thing. This is going to be short. I only want a one-word answer. It's prediction time. You can give me yes or no. Because I saw Jimmy Butler has indicated he only wants to end up in Phoenix and will not play anywhere else regardless of money, etc. He's trying to carve that path out. Jimmy Butler ends up in Phoenix at the conclusion of the trade deadline, or let's say before the deadline passes. Yes or no? Just give me a one-word answer. I'll give you like 3 more seconds of rambling here to think about it. Yes or no, Jimmy Butler in Phoenix? Justin, I'll start with you. Oh, all right. Allan. Ooh. Man. I'm going to go yes. I don't know. It might get spicy. Okay, I can't break my own rule of one word. I'm going to go yes. We got 1 yes, 2 no's. We'll see. You guys are probably right. We'll see what plays out, but leaves it on a cliffhanger, and I like that. Guys, it's been a pleasure breaking down these 2 trades and all the conspiracies and other things behind the trades. As always, you, the wonderful viewers and listeners, thank you for sticking it out with us through this episode. Let us know your thoughts on all these trades, who won, who lost, and if you buy anything about these Luka, like potentially tanking conspiracies or all that, like his career isn't on the upward trajectory that everyone assumes it is because of his skill. Let us know just your thoughts in general on all this. For Allan Munzler, for Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. This has been another episode of In the Lab with Hoopsology. Take care, enjoy the trade deadline, and peace out.
See you next time.
Later.